Hello everyone, today I'm going to be doing an uncut review of a very unorthodox film, particularly a Swedish art house film called A Pigeon Sitting on a Branch Reflecting on Existence. So that's the entire name of the film. I feel like this movie review needs to be uncut because there's a lot of ads about this film. It's a very strange, you know, unorthodox sort of film. So I felt that this is the best way to go about this review. Um, I'm going to talk about this film first from a technical perspective, then kind of as a meaning story perspective. So, from a technical perspective, there's a lot to admire in this film, cinematographically particularly. A lot of this film tries to basically bring out and convey these very drab, mundane interior and claustrophobic settings, and I feel that cinematographically, it's a really excellent film in that you're not only getting a vision of that kind of boring surrounding, but you're also getting some very, ironically, you know, visually interesting shots and what I call multi-layered shots. And I've referred to this term multi-layered shots in another review earlier, I believe. I don't remember which one, but basically I'll define it again. Personally, what I call a multi-layered shot, and I'm sure there's some technical term for this that I still need to find out, so let me know in the comments below if you know what this particularly is basically when in the frame there's two very distinct actions happening at the same time. And whenever a camera is able to capture that, especially in a very claustrophobic interior setting, that's commendable cinematography right there. And I feel that also somewhat because of the blocking in this film, the way the actors and characters are positioned, I think that also creates some very visual, interesting shots in the film, where two people are doing very, very different things, but it's all in the one frame or one shot. So I think that cinematographically, again, this film is very excellent in that it not only manages to convey, that boring, mundane theme that it has, or like kind of the sadness that it has going in through the film, and I'll talk a little bit about this later when I talk about the story, but it also manages to make very visually interesting shots that kind of help convey the meaning of the movie a little bit more. So visually, I felt that this film did a really good job. Also, there's a lot of makeup work in this movie where everyone's wearing this kind of white makeup. Kind of talk about it a little bit later too, but I personally think that kind of detracted from the film, kind of distracting. I think I understand why they did that and what it adds, and mostly I'd say it's a positive that they did that, and it adds to the film rather than detracts. But a lot of the time it was kind of distracting because you couldn't see the actual expression of the characters' faces. So this movie is very theatrical in its creation, and how its tone is. That you have this makeup and actors are acting, but it's very difficult to garner an expression, distinct expressions from the actors' faces with all that makeup up, and also the camera is often very far from the actors, and the actors are widely sprayed out, so that kind of makes it hard to see the characters' expressions. So that's kind of the one critique I have about the makeup work, which kind of then ends up tying in with the camera work. So I'd say it's not that big of a negative. It's just something I wanted to mention because it kind of distracted for me from the film. Anyway, let's go straight into the story about this film and kind of what I got out from it and how I believe the director did a good job of conveying the message. I think there are going to be a lot of different people that go into this movie and then come out, and a lot of those people are going to derive very, very different meanings, and most of them, in fact, I'd say half of them, are probably going to convey or say that this film is pretentious nonsense. Certainly from the first scene, I was a little bit wary because things were going a little bit strangely or in an unorthodox way. But I think if you are patient, and this is a kind of film that, of course, rewards patience, the payoff at the end of the film, I believe, is actually really worth it. And the movie kind of comes together in a really strange way. I do think that, it's a film that people will derive different meanings from, but I think that just about everyone will come to either some sort of finality in this film. You'll be able to garner something from this film. I think you'll be able to get at the end something to take from this film. And personally, I don't think this movie is necessarily should be labeled as pretentious nonsense. I think that this film did a good job of a different number of things. So first thing I'm going to talk about is the story. Because this film doesn't really have much of a story in that it's basically a collection of scenes about different storylines. Some of those are absurd storylines, things that you would not happen in real life, while others are things that you'd see in the everyday world. And one of the most prominent storylines is basically about these two salesmen who are working as partners, and they sell novelty toys, like vampire teeth, laugh bags, whatever. And I think that is the prominent storyline in the film, and that's kind of the one storyline that you follow throughout the film. But there are other storylines about different locations and people. So as I said, though, a lot of this film is comedy. It's a comedy, Swedish comedy art house film. Sounds like a wallop of a lot, but the movie does deliver. And part of the reason that I say it delivers is because I laugh. And I think that was the most important thing for me personally, is that if this movie is a comedy film, was I able to laugh? And the answer is yes. And the way it gets laughs, of course, just like the title of this film and the execution, is very unorthodox, the way it gets laughed. I think most of the laughs it gets is through this kind of, not only through the performances, which I think are really good in this film, really strong performances from everyone in the entire cast, even the extras were giving something to the film. And for me personally, how I get the laughs, and I think this is how most people will get the laughs out of this film, is kind of this juxtaposition of ideas. A lot of this film, as I said, was like, the absurd stuff. So the director kind of juxtaposes these absurd things, and kind of this is also a little bit having to do with the editing and the screenplay and how the film's put together. But he puts basically this absurd scene right next to this scene which feels like it fits somewhere in our real world. And the ones that I found the most funny were the ones that I thought feel, real and very grounded in our world. And the reason I laughed is not only because it was being presented in such a boring, drab way. That was part of the comedy, is that it takes very normal conversations and presents them as the most boring thing in the world. And it kind of makes you kind of ponder a little bit and make you feel kind of self-conscious about a bunch of different conversations that we have. Some of the funny things is how it very highlights or brings to attention very normal everyday conversations. But you kind of begin to laugh at kind of the absurdity of what's going on, because you come right straight from an absurd scene and now you're going straight to this kind of normal scene, and they start to kind of equal out in your brain somewhere. And I think the director's done a really good job of that, is to, juxtapose those two scenes together, where it kind of comes to the notion where you're kind of seeing these humans kind of like try and make order from chaos, basically. And it's something that we tend to do every day. It's happening all the time, and it kind of goes deeper and deeper with every scene. And I really enjoyed how it was able to create comedy out of everyday conversations, and the fact that it helps and somehow is able to make you self-conscious about the way that humanity has become such a pro at making kind of order from chaos. And I thought that was really entertaining and thought-provoking to see. And a lot of film has to do with that, is kind of just how humans interact, but there's kind of this strange irony to it where they're kind of making a big deal out of basically nothing. Like those novelty salesmen, they, mild spoilers here, but mild, so don't worry. They kind of go around, make house to house with this big briefcase. One of the characters takes this big briefcase, and he opens it, and it's just vampire teeth and laugh bags, but he does it in such a business way, you can't help but laugh at kind of the way he acts. And again, this is a credit to the very strong performances in this film. I would name those actors, but I can't pronounce their Swedish names, so I'm not going to try. But the performances in this film are very strong, and that really helps to lend to the laughs in this film. And ultimately, I'd say, yeah, the film kind of uses its performances, its screenplay, direction, and editing to kind of juxtapose these different scenes where you have something crazy happen, but even the crazy stuff is somehow in a strange way grounded in reality, where you have everyday conversations happening even in the crazy stuff, and then kind of also everyday stuff that's just everyday stuff. And it kind of ends up bringing you again to that order from chaos kind of meaning. For me personally, I think a lot of people will get different things from this very, very strange film. For the pacing of this film, which is a little bit different from going from the meaning to the pacing, it's not a very smooth transition, but for the pacing of the film, I'll say it's a very slow film. I'd say it's going to make you want to go to sleep, kind of, because the framing is also like very, makes you want to close your eyes and go to sleep, and the dialogue is very soft spoken. You can't really see the expression of the characters. So yeah, you should know going in that it's a slow film and that it's a very drab, kind of mundane film. But if you wait, and you're gonna get this amazing scene towards the end of the film that kind of changes the direction of the film completely. And initially, I was thinking of ruining this scene in this video and telling you, oh, spoilers, but I don't even want to talk about much about that scene because I want the viewers to experience it. But it has to do basically with this group of old people watching something terrible take place. And it really changes the meaning of the film, where you start questioning humanity in general and kind of our moral compass as a collective species, which sounds like a lot of hefty ideas for a film to take on, but in a strange and ultimately kind of comedic way, it transfers that comedy into something so sober and so serious. You know, you got this weird, dry, awkward, wry, and strange humor going, and then suddenly the film takes this very stranger tone, and it becomes very dark suddenly. But it kind of feels fitting that it becomes dark, because somewhere in your mind, I think you're going to kind of expect it to go there, and it does, and it works really well. And it's just one scene that kind of takes that very dark tone, but it's one of the best scenes in the movie, and it's going to make you question a lot of things, not only that were presented earlier in the movie, but kind of a lot about just general moral questioning. I think it's a really interesting film to watch in the end of the day. A pigeon sat on a branch reflecting on existence, and I think at the end of the movie, you're going to be that pigeon, because the movie presents some very difficult ideas. Because of that one scene, I think it kind of changes it. At the same time, though, despite having all this hefty, crazy stuff going on, it's a comedy film, and I really did laugh a lot. Not necessarily a lot, maybe, but I laughed quite a bit, I'll say, throughout the film. And so for the film to be able to do that in its own strange way is definitely successful for me. And at the same time, it was able to pack a lot of meaning by the end of the movie, and the payoff was worth it, despite the film being a little bit boring in its pacing and it's a little bit slow. I think that at the end of the day, it's technically excellent, cinematographically. There's a lot of meaning, it's funny, and you're going to end up it's a very thought-provoking film, definitely. And even though it has strange or unorthodox ways, I mean, I'd recommend you to at least try it, check it out, maybe even try it for the first 15 minutes or whatever. If it's not up your alley, then you might not be able to make it through the whole 100-minute runtime. But I'd really not tell you to just stop at the 15-minute mark, because if you do, you're not going to get to that one scene that I think kind of changes the direction of the film. So I'll give it a B+. Thanks for watching.